The argument had been going on for 3 hours now, and David Ross was done listening. He sat at the curved human delegation table in the Galactic Council chambers, a space so vast it could swallow a city block. Representatives from 87 species filled the tiered seating, their voices echoing off walls designed to make everyone feel small. The Talvine ambassador was shouting again, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. The asteroid belts in the Deneb sector belong to Council-regulated space. Humanity has no claim to resources that existed long before your species learned to leave your planet. David kept his expression neutral. The Deneb asteroids were 3 light-years from the nearest Council world and 15 light-years from Earth. Humanity had been mining there for 12 years. Suddenly, after Earth discovered rare metals in the third belt, the Council remembered the asteroids existed. Ambassador Ross, you must understand the importance of collective resource management, the Quarian delegate said, her voice dripping with fake patience. The Quarians controlled most Council banking. They got rich from every transaction fee, every tariff, every percentage point they skimmed from other species' trade. Individual species cannot simply take what they wish. What they really meant was that humanity couldn't take what it wanted. The ancient species, the ones who founded the Council 6,000 years ago, they took plenty. They just called it administrative priority or historical rights. David had spent 5 years as Earth's representative to the Council. He had watched them vote down every human proposal for fair trade agreements. He had sat through lectures about how humanity needed to mature before being trusted with full Council privileges. He had smiled politely, while species who burned their own planets argued that Earth needed environmental supervision. The worst part wasn't the corruption. David had studied enough history to know powerful institutions became corrupt. The worst part was the contempt. They didn't even hide it anymore. To them, humanity was the loud child at the adult table, something to be tolerated until it learned its place. Perhaps we should vote, High Chancellor Orvik suggested from his elevated platform. The ancient Dravine was over 400 years old and looked like a walking skeleton covered in gray skin. He had been Council Chancellor for 90 years. All in favor of transferring Deneb sector mining rights to Council administration. 63 hands, claws, and appendages rose. The same species who always voted together, the same bloc that controlled every Council decision. Opposed. 14 votes against. Mostly younger species, ones who remembered being bullied into accepting bad deals. The measure passes, Orvik announced. Humanity has 30 days to cease operations and transfer all equipment to Council inspectors. David stood up. The chamber went quiet. It wasn't normal protocol to stand during proceedings. No, David said simply. Orvik's lipless mouth twitched. Excuse me. I said no. Earth will not transfer the asteroid belts. We will not cease operations. We will not accept Council inspectors. David began gathering his data tablets and papers, placing them carefully in his case. Furthermore, the Terran Coalition formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before the chamber erupted. Species were shouting in dozens of languages. The Quarian delegate was on her feet, her face flushed purple. The Talvine ambassador's translator couldn't keep up with his rapid-fire speech. Orvik slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Ambassador Ross, no species has withdrawn from the Council in 3,000 years. You cannot simply leave. David closed his case and looked up at the Chancellor. Actually, we can. I've reviewed the Council Charter. Article 47 allows any member species to withdraw with formal notice. Consider this formal notice. You're making a grave mistake, the Quarian delegate said, her voice shaking with anger. The Council provides protection, trade networks, and diplomatic immunity. Without us, Earth will collapse. Perhaps, David said calmly, But that's our choice to make, not yours. Orvik leaned forward. You think humanity can survive alone? Your colonies depend on council shipping lanes. Your trade depends on council currency exchange. Your safety depends on council protection from piracy and hostile species. His voice dropped to something almost sympathetic. Return to your seat, Ambassador Ross. We can discuss the Deneb situation more thoroughly. Perhaps a compromise can be reached. David had heard that tone before. It was the voice of someone offering mercy to an inferior. It was the voice of someone who expected gratitude for basic fairness. We're done with compromises, David said. For 5 years, Earth has compromised. We've accepted unfair tariffs. We've agreed to restricted shipping routes that add months to our supply lines. We've paid fees that other species don't pay. We've watched the Council veto our trade agreements while approving identical deals for founding species. He looked around the chamber. We joined the Council hopping to find friends and equals. Instead, we found masters who expected servants. The Talvine ambassador laughed, a harsh barking sound. Equals. Your species has been in space for barely 200 years. The Dravine built interstellar civilizations when your ancestors were hunting with stone tools. You want to be equals. Yes, David said, and since you're not willing to treat us as equals, we're leaving. He walked toward the exit. His security team, 2 silent humans who had stood behind him for 3 hours, fell into step beside him. You'll be back, Orvik called after him. Within a year, Earth will be begging for readmission. We'll require reparations for this insult, of course. Your colonies will pay heavy fines, but we are generous. We will allow you to return. David stopped at the doorway and looked back. High Chancellor, humanity learned something important in our history. Powerful empires always believe they're eternal, right until the moment they collapse. The Council has been corrupt for so long that you've forgotten what it means to earn respect instead of demanding it. He left the chamber. Behind him, the shouting started again. Let them argue, let them threaten. Earth had made its choice. 3 weeks later, David sat in his office on the lunar diplomatic station, reviewing reports. Every screen showed the same pattern. Human merchant ships were operating freely, using routes the Council had forbidden. Trade agreements were being signed with independent worlds, ones who never joined the Council or quietly left decades ago. Earth's colonies were thriving without Council oversight. His assistant, Rachel Kim, knocked on the open door. Sir, you need to see this. She put a data pad on his desk. It showed Council intelligence reports, leaked by a source David didn't ask about. The Council had expected human civilization to collapse within weeks of withdrawal. Their economists had written detailed projections about Earth coming back desperate and defeated. Instead, human trade had doubled. 14 non-Council species had signed free trade agreements with Earth. 6 Council member species were quietly asking about similar deals, bypassing official channels. They're panicking, Rachel said. 3 species announced they're reconsidering their Council membership. The Quarians are pushing for sanctions against anyone who trades with us. David smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Let them panic. They built an empire on controlling other species' prosperity. Now they're learning what happens when someone refuses to play their game. His communicator buzzed. Admiral Grace Powell's face appeared, transmitted from Earth's Orbital Defense Command. Ambassador, we've got movement. Talvine fleet is mobilizing near their core systems. Council patrol ships are being reassigned to our borders. How many ships? Best estimate. They could put together 60, maybe 70 warships within a month. David nodded slowly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but he'd prepared for it. Admiral, proceed with Operation Daylight. Grace smiled. She'd been waiting for this order. Understood, sir. Time to show them what they missed. Across human space, ships that the Council had catalogued as cargo haulers and civilian transports began transforming. Weapon ports opened. Shield generators came online. Hidden military vessels dropped their camouflage and took up defensive positions. The Galactic Council thought they knew humanity's capabilities. They had no idea what Earth had been building for the past 20 years. They were about to learn that underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. The Quarian economic minister stared at the holographic displays floating above her desk, watching her civilization's wealth drain away in real time. Numbers that should have been climbing were falling. Trade routes that should have been full were empty. The carefully constructed financial empire her species had built over 2,000 years was crumbling, and it had only been 3 weeks since the humans left. "Explain this to me again," she said to her chief analyst, a younger Quarian named Pelta who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "How are the humans doing this?" Pelta pulled up a star map. Red lines showed council trade routes, the ones that every member species was required to use. Blue lines showed new routes, ones that hadn't existed a month ago. The blue lines were shorter, faster, and they all connected to human space. "They're offering direct trade," Pelta said. "No council fees, no tariffs, no inspections that delay cargo for weeks. A ship leaves a human port and arrives at its destination without anyone taking a cut." He zoomed in on a cluster of independent worlds. "These 73 planets were paying us an average of 18% on all transactions. Now they're paying humans 0% and getting their goods faster. That's impossible. Trade requires regulation. Without proper oversight, there's chaos, piracy, fraud. The humans have a different system. They call it trust but verify. Ships register their cargo, pay a small docking fee at both ends, and that's it. If someone cheats, they get blacklisted. No massive bureaucracy. No inspectors demanding bribes. It's actually working." The minister felt something she hadn't experienced in her 140-year life. Fear. Real fear. "What about the embargo? We threatened sanctions against anyone who trades with Earth. 7 species ignored us completely. 12 more are trading with humans through intermediaries. And Minister, we have a bigger problem." Pelta pulled up financial records. 16 council member species are 3 months behind on their membership fees. They're claiming economic hardship. "They're lying." "Of course they're lying. They're sending the money to human banks instead. The humans are offering better interest rates and no withdrawal restrictions." The minister sat down heavily. The Quarian economy was built on one simple principle: control the money, control everything. They had made themselves indispensable by putting their fingers in every transaction in council space. But humans had shown everyone what the Quarians had always known, what they'd spent centuries hiding. The system was a scam. The fees and regulations didn't protect anyone. They just made the Quarians rich. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. The Talvine Military Command was arguing about fleet deployment. The Dravine Council representatives were watching their authority evaporate as species stopped attending sessions. The entire power structure that had governed galactic civilization for thousands of years was shaking, and it had only been 3 weeks. High Chancellor Orvik sat in his private chambers, reading intelligence reports about humanity. He had expected them to fail quickly and dramatically. He had expected to watch Earth's colonies starve, their trade collapse, their people riot in the streets. Then they would come back begging, and he would make an example of them that would remind every other species why you didn't leave the council. Instead, humanity was thriving, more than thriving. They were growing. For new colonies had been established in systems the council had declared off-limits. Human merchant ships were everywhere, moving with a speed and efficiency that made council vessels look obsolete. The report from council intelligence was even more disturbing. The humans had been preparing for this. For years, maybe decades. They had built redundant supply networks. They had established hidden trade agreements with non-council species. They had trained their merchant crews in combat operations. They had been planning to leave from the moment they joined. "They played us," Orvik said quietly to himself. They sat in our chambers for 5 years, smiled, nodded, took notes, and the whole time they were preparing to leave. His aide, a young Dravine who served as his assistant, cleared his throat. "Sir, the Talvine ambassador is demanding an emergency session. He wants the council to authorize military action against human colonies." "No," Orvik said immediately. "Sorry." I said no. Do you know why the council has lasted 6,000 years? Because we don't make stupid mistakes. Military action against humanity would be the stupidest mistake we could make. But they're spreading chaos. 17 species are questioning their membership. The Quarians are facing economic collapse. If we don't act, the council will fall apart. Orvik stood and walked to the window. His chambers overlooked the council station, a massive structure that had been built to demonstrate the power and permanence of galactic government. From here, he could see ships from dozens of species docked at the ports. Except there weren't as many as usual. Traffic was down 40%. "The humans want us to attack them," Orvik said. "They've been preparing for it. Did you read the intelligence assessment about their military capabilities? The one where our analysts admit they have no idea how many warships Earth has because their cargo ships are built with hidden weapon systems. The one where they calculate that humanity might have defensive installations we've never detected." "I read it, sir, but those are estimates. We don't know for certain." "Exactly, we don't know. And when you don't know your enemy's strength, you don't attack them." Orvik turned from the window. "Cancel the emergency session. Tell the Talvine that the council will not authorize military action at this time." "They won't accept that." "They don't have to accept it. The council doesn't work for the Talvine." Orvik sat back down. "Send a message to Ambassador Ross. Private channel. Tell him I want to negotiate." The aide looked shocked. "Sir, you told him that Earth would come back begging. If you reach out now, it makes us look weak." "We are weak. The humans exposed it. They showed every species in the galaxy that the council isn't necessary. They showed everyone that our regulations and fees and endless bureaucracy weren't protecting anyone. They were just protecting our power." Orvik pulled up the economic reports on his own display. "We can either admit that and try to salvage something, or we can pretend everything is fine until the council collapses around us." The aide nodded slowly and left to send the message. Orvik sat alone in his chambers, thinking about how everything had changed. Humanity had been in the council for 5 years, just 5 years, and in that time they had been studying, learning, and preparing. They had watched how the council operated. They had seen the corruption and the contempt, and instead of accepting it, they had planned their escape. The really brilliant part was how patient they had been. They never showed their hand. They took the insults and the unfair votes and the discriminatory regulations, and they smiled through all of it. They let the council believe humans were weak and naive. And when they finally left, they did it so decisively that there was no going back. 2 hours later, Orvik received David Ross's response to his request for negotiation. It was short. "The Terran Coalition does not negotiate with the Council. We negotiate with individual species based on mutual respect and fair trade. If the Dravine wish to establish bilateral relations with Earth, we are willing to discuss terms." Orvik read the message 3 times. The human wasn't even pretending to respect council authority anymore. He was treating the Dravine as just another species, not as the founders of galactic civilization. The worst part was that Orvik couldn't even argue. The council's authority came from the belief that it was necessary. The humans had proven it wasn't. They had shown that species could trade freely, defend themselves, and prosper without council oversight. Every day they succeeded made the council look more like what it actually was, a protection racket run by old species who wanted to control everyone else. Orvik drafted a response offering to meet with Ambassador Ross to discuss Dravine-human relations. It felt like surrender, maybe because it was. Across council space, the cracks were spreading. Species were quietly withdrawing from council institutions. Trade was shifting to human routes. The financial networks the Quarians controlled were bleeding money. Military commanders were questioning whether they should be preparing for war with Earth or preparing to defend their own systems when the Council could no longer provide protection. The Galactic Council had ruled for 6,000 years. It had survived wars, rebellions, and economic crises, but it had never faced an enemy like humanity, an enemy that didn't want to conquer the Council or reform it, an enemy that simply walked away and proved that the Council wasn't needed at all. That was the worst kind of defeat, not being destroyed but being made irrelevant. Commander Patricia, you watched the Council patrol ship through the viewscreen of the TCSF Valiant. The patrol vessel was Talvine, built like most of their ships with more weapons than sense. It had intercepted the human cargo hauler Morning Star in neutral space, demanding what they called a compliance inspection. What they really meant was boarding a human ship and reminding everyone that the Council still had power. Distance to the patrol ship, Patricia asked her tactical officer. 12,000 kilometers in holding. They've got weapons charged but haven't locked on yet. Good. How long until the rest of the squadron arrives? 30 seconds. They're coming in right on schedule. Patricia smiled. The Talvine thought they were dealing with one human destroyer. They had no idea what was about to happen. Communications, open a channel to the Morning Star. Let me talk to their captain. A moment later, the face of Captain Brian Woods appeared on her screen. He looked calm despite having a warship threatening his ship. Commander Yu, good to see you. I was starting to think you weren't going to make it. We've been here the whole time, Brian, just waiting for our friends to arrive. Sit tight. She switched channels to the Talvine patrol ship. This is Commander Patricia Yu of the Terran Coalition Space Force. You are targeting a civilian vessel in neutral space. This is a violation of standard shipping protocols and an act of aggression. Power down your weapons immediately. The Talvine commander appeared on screen. He was young for a Talvine officer, probably trying to make a name for himself. This vessel is operating in Council space without proper authorization. We have the right to inspect any ship that might be carrying contraband or operating in violation of Council regulations. First, this is neutral space, not Council space. Second, the Terran Coalition is not a Council member, so Council regulations don't apply to our ships. Third, you have 5 seconds to power down your weapons before this becomes a diplomatic incident you really don't want. The Talvine commander laughed. You're threatening me. One destroyer against a Council patrol ship. I don't think so, human. Patricia checked her tactical display. Right on time. Actually, you should check your sensors. The color drained from the Talvine's face as his tactical officer started shouting in the background. 15 human destroyers had just dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, surrounding the Council patrol ship in a sphere formation. Every ship had weapons locked on target. Now, Patricia said calmly, let me explain the situation. You have one patrol ship. We have 15 destroyers. Your shields can't handle the combined firepower of even 3 of my ships. Your weapons can maybe damage one of us before we turn your ship into scrap metal. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to power down your weapons. You're going to apologize to Captain Woods for threatening his ship, and you're going to leave. Or we can do this the hard way. The Talvine commander was trying to maintain his authority, but his hands were shaking. The Council will hear about this. This is an act of war. No, threatening our civilian ships in neutral space is an act of war. We're just defending our people. Now power down your weapons. I won't ask again. For a long moment, nothing happened. Patricia kept her expression neutral, but her heart was racing. If the Talvine fired, she would have to respond. And if she responded, human and Council ships would start shooting at each other. That would mean war, real war, and thousands of people would die. The Talvine tactical officer said something urgent in his own language. The commander closed his eyes, took a breath, and gave the order. The patrol ship's weapons powered down. Smart choice, Patricia said. Now leave. The Council patrol ship turned and accelerated away from the area. Patricia waited until it was out of weapons range before opening the channel to Captain Woods again. You're clear, Brian. Sorry about the excitement. No problem, Commander. Thanks for the escort. I'll make sure corporate knows you folks are earning your pay. Patricia laughed. Just doing our job, safe travels. She closed the channel and looked at her crew. They were all young, most of them in their 20s. This was the first time most of them had faced down another warship with weapons hot. They handled it well. Good work, everyone. Helm, set course back to Patrol Station 3. Let's give the Council something to think about. As the squadron moved back into position, Patricia thought about what just happened. For the first time since humans left the Council, human and Council ships had faced each other with weapons ready. Nobody fired, but it was close. Too close. Her communications officer spoke up. Commander, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. It's Admiral Powell. Grace Powell's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Commander Yu, I just watched the recordings from your encounter. Well done. You kept your head and avoided bloodshed. Thank you, Admiral. What are we hearing from the Council? Panic mostly. The Talvine are demanding an emergency session. They're claiming we threatened their ship unprovoked. About a dozen species are calling us warmongers. But here's the interesting part. Grace leaned forward. 23 species have already contacted us privately to express support. They're not saying it publicly yet, but they're telling us that the Talvine had no right to board that ship. So we're winning the political battle. For now, but Patricia, this is just the beginning. The Council is scared, and scared people do stupid things. The Talvine have the largest fleet in Council space. If they decide to make this about pride instead of common sense, we're going to have a real problem. Patricia nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. Do we have orders? Maintain your patrol pattern, protect our shipping. If Council ships approach human vessels, you warn them off. If they power up weapons, you defend our people. But do not fire first. I don't care how much they provoke you. We are not starting this war. Understood, Admiral. Grace's expression softened. How's your crew holding up? They're good, young and nervous, but good. They know what they signed up for. Make sure they understand how important they are. Every human ship out here is sending a message. We're not afraid. We're not backing down, but we're also not looking for a fight. That balance is what's going to keep this from turning into a bloodbath. The transmission ended. Patricia sat in her command chair, thinking about the 15 ships under her command and the 500 people serving on them. Most of them joined the Space Force, thinking they would explore new systems and maybe deal with pirates. Now they were on the front line of what might become the biggest war the galaxy had seen in centuries. Her executive officer, a veteran named James Carter who had served in Earth's Navy before joining the Space Force, stepped up beside her. Commander, the crew is asking questions. They want to know if we're going to war with the Council. What did you tell them? That I don't know, because I don't. Patricia appreciated his honesty. Tell them the truth. We're defending our people and our rights. If the Council wants to turn that into a war, that's their choice. But we're not going to be the ones who start shooting first. James nodded and moved to address the crew. Patricia pulled up the tactical display showing all human space. Green dots marked human ships and stations. Red dots marked known Council military assets. The red dots outnumbered the green ones by a significant margin. But numbers weren't everything. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable. Human weapons were designed to punch through the energy shields most Council species relied on. Human crews had trained for this exact scenario for years. And most importantly, humans were defending their homes and their freedom. That was worth more than any numerical advantage. Still, Patricia knew that if this turned into a full war, a lot of people on both sides were going to die. She just hoped the council leadership was smart enough to realize that winning wouldn't be worth the cost. Her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Commander, we're getting reports from across the sector. 6 more council patrol ships have attempted to intercept human vessels. All of them backed down when our escorts appeared." "Good. Make sure all encounters are recorded and transmitted to Earth. I want documentation of every provocation." "Yes, Commander." Patricia leaned back in her chair. The council was testing them, seeing how far they could push before humans pushed back. It was a dangerous game. One miscalculation, one trigger-happy officer on either side, and the shooting would start. And once it started, Patricia knew it would be very hard to stop. The Talvine Admiral Krennic stood on the command deck of the Dominion's Pride, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. Behind his flagship, 60 warships moved in perfect formation. It was the largest battle fleet the Talvine had assembled in 3 generations, and it was about to teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. "Status report," Krennic ordered. His tactical officer responded immediately. "All ships report ready. We're approaching the border of human territory. No signs of defensive forces yet." Krennic smiled. The humans had been playing games, embarrassing council patrol ships with their little ambushes. They thought they were clever, surrounding single ships with overwhelming force. But they had never faced a real military fleet. They had never faced the full might of a species that had been conquering systems when Earth was still in its Stone Age. "Open a channel to the human colony on the 3rd planet. What do they call it?" "New Harmony, sir." "Ridiculous name. Open the channel." A moment later, the face of the colony administrator appeared on screen. She was a middle-aged woman named Lisa Park who looked concerned but not panicked. That bothered Krennic. She should be terrified. "This is Admiral Krennic of the Talvine Defense Fleet. Your colony is in violation of Council regulations. You are operating in space that requires Council authorization. You are using resources that belong to the galactic community, and your species has repeatedly threatened Council security forces. This ends now." Lisa kept her voice steady. "Admiral, this system is 14 light-years from the nearest Council world. We established this colony 20 years ago. We're not violating anyone's territory or rights. The Council determines what is and is not a violation. You have 1 hour to evacuate your colony and surrender all facilities and equipment to Council administration. If you refuse, we will use force to remove you. I need to contact Earth for instructions." "You have 1 hour, Krennic out." He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Target their orbital defense platform. When the hour is up, if they haven't evacuated, destroy it. That should convince them we're serious." 20 minutes later, his communications officer spoke up. "Sir, we're detecting FTL signatures. Multiple contacts incoming." "How many?" 12, no wait, 15, they're human warships." Krennic laughed. 15 ships, against 60. This is going to be even easier than I thought. All ships prepare for combat. When the humans arrive, we'll show them what happens when they challenge real military power. The human ships dropped out of FTL in a loose formation, positioning themselves between the Talvine fleet and the colony. Krennic studied the tactical display. 15 destroyers against 60 warships. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Admiral Raymond Park commanded the human defensive force from the destroyer Guardian. He had known this moment was coming eventually. The Council had been escalating their provocations for weeks. It was only a matter of time before someone decided to use force instead of threats. "Sir, the Talvine fleet is powering up weapons," his tactical officer reported. "We're being targeted." Raymond nodded calmly. "Did the civilians finish evacuating the colony?" "Last transport just left. They're heading for the FTL jump point. They'll be clear in 3 minutes." "Good. Open a channel to the Talvine flagship." Admiral Krennic's face appeared on screen. He looked confident, almost amused. "Human Commander, you are outnumbered 4-1. Surrender now and I will allow you to retreat with your ships intact." "Admiral Krennic," Raymond said quietly, "you are in Terran Coalition space with hostile intent. You have threatened our civilians. You have powered up weapons and targeted our people. This is your last chance to withdraw peacefully." "Last chance?" Krennic actually laughed. "You have 15 ships, I have 60. What do you think is going to happen here?" "I think you're about to make a terrible mistake." Krennic's smile faded. "Fire on the orbital platform. Let's show these humans what real power looks like." The Talvin flagship fired its main cannon. The beam weapon crossed the distance in seconds and slammed into the orbital platform's shields. The shield held for a moment, then collapsed. The second shot tore through the platform's structure, causing explosions that lit up the space around the colony. Raymond felt his jaw tighten. They had just attacked a civilian installation. There was no going back now. All ships, defensive pattern Omega, engage at will. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for decades. The human ships moved with a precision that shocked the Talvin commanders. They didn't charge forward into a brawl. Instead, they split into 3 groups of 5 ships each, moving at speeds the Talvin hadn't known human vessels could achieve. The first group swept around the Talvin fleet's left flank, their kinetic weapons firing in synchronized bursts. Talvin shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did almost nothing against solid projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. 3 Talvin cruisers took critical hits in the first volley, their shields collapsing as metal projectiles punched through their hulls. The second group hit the right flank with the same devastating effect. The Talvin fleet tried to turn to face the threats, but human ships were faster and more maneuverable. By the time the Council ships repositioned, the third group of human vessels had already struck from above, targeting the Talvin command and control ships. "What's happening?" Krennic shouted as his ship shook from impacts. "How are they moving that fast? How are they penetrating our shields?" His tactical officer was frantically working his console. "Their weapons are kinetic, sir, physical projectiles. Our shields can't stop them, and their ships are faster than any design in our database. They're outmaneuvering us." On the Guardian's bridge, Raymond watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Talvin had expected a slugging match between battle lines. They got a surgical strike by ships designed specifically to counter Council technology. Every advantage the Council thought they had turned into a weakness. Energy shields useless against kinetic weapons. Heavy armor that made ships slow and easy targets. Weapons designed to burn through shields that couldn't track faster human vessels. "Sir, 5 Talvin ships are disabled. 3 more are heavily damaged," his tactical officer reported. "The colony's merchant ships have transformed. They're joining the fight." Raymond nodded. The supposedly unarmed cargo haulers near the colony had opened hidden weapon bays and were adding their fire to the human destroyers. It was a trick Earth had learned from centuries of naval warfare. Never let your enemy know your true capabilities until you absolutely have to. Aboard the Dominion's Pride, Admiral Krennic was learning the same lesson humans had taught the Council before. Never underestimate your enemy. All ships, retreat. Fall back to the rally point. His communications officer looked shocked. "Sir, we still outnumber them if we coordinate our fire. They've destroyed or disabled 15 of our ships in less than 20 minutes. At this rate, we won't have a fleet left in an hour. Order the retreat." The Talvin fleet began pulling back, their formation breaking apart as damaged ships struggled to keep up. The human vessels didn't pursue. They held position around the colony, watching the Council forces withdraw. Raymond opened a channel to the Talvin flagship one more time. "Admiral Krennic, your damaged ships need medical assistance. We're sending rescue teams to help with casualties. Tell your crews not to fire on our rescue ships." Krennic stared at him in disbelief. You're offering to help us after what we just did. You have wounded people floating in damaged ships. We're not going to let them die. War is bad enough without unnecessary cruelty. Take your fleet and leave. Tell the council what happened here. Tell them that we will defend ourselves, but we take no pleasure in killing. Maybe someone will listen. The transmission ended. Krennic sat in his command chair, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists. 15 ships disabled or destroyed. 200 Talvin dead. Hundreds more wounded. And the humans were sending rescue ships to help his people. He didn't understand these creatures at all. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "Command is asking for a status report. Tell them we engaged human forces. Tell them we lost. Tell them the humans are more dangerous than anyone realized." Krennic closed his eyes. "And tell them the humans showed more mercy than we did." Back on Earth, the recordings of the battle were being reviewed by every military analyst and political leader in the Terran coalition. The tactical victory was clear. 15 human ships had defeated 60 Talvin warships with minimal damage, but the strategic situation was more complicated. President Michelle Carter watched the footage for the third time, paying special attention to the moment when Raymond Park ordered rescue ships to help wounded Talvin. "That was a good call," she said to Admiral Powell. "We needed to show strength, but also humanity." "It was the right thing to do," Grace replied. "But I'm worried about what comes next. The Talvin lost face. So did the Council. Wounded pride is dangerous." "How many Council species have reached out since the battle?" 29. Most of them want to open trade talks. 5 are asking about mutual defense agreements. The Council is falling apart, Michelle. The President nodded slowly. "Then we need to be ready for desperate measures. Cornered animals are the most dangerous kind." The emergency meeting had been going on for 6 hours, and nothing had been resolved. High Chancellor Orvik watched as council members shouted at each other across the chamber. The Talvin were demanding full military mobilization. The Quarians were desperately trying to hold together what remained of their financial networks. Smaller species were openly questioning why they should follow council leadership that had just led them into a humiliating defeat. "The humans must be punished," the Talvin ambassador insisted, his 4 arms gesturing angrily. "They destroyed council ships. They attacked our fleet without provocation." The Drellin representative, a species that had always been quiet during council sessions, stood up. That alone was unusual. The Drellin never volunteered to speak. "Without provocation, your fleet entered their space with weapons charged. You fired on their colony. You threatened their civilians. The humans responded with restraint. They could have destroyed your entire fleet, but they didn't. They even sent rescue ships to help your wounded. And you call this an attack?" Several other species murmured in agreement. The Talvin ambassador looked shocked that anyone would challenge him so directly. "The Drellin representative makes a fair point," Orvik said carefully. "Perhaps we should review exactly what happened before deciding on a response." "We know what happened," a new voice said. It was the Quarian minister who had been watching her economy collapse. "The humans proved they can defend themselves. They proved they don't need the council. And now half the species in this chamber are wondering why they're still paying council fees when the humans offer better trade deals." The chamber erupted again. Orvik let them argue. There was no point trying to restore order. The council was already broken. The battle at New Harmony just made it obvious to everyone. Meanwhile, across council space, individual species were making their own decisions. The Drellin foreign minister contacted Earth directly, bypassing council channels completely. Within a week, they had signed a mutual defense pact with humanity. 3 other species quickly followed. They weren't joining Earth. They were abandoning the council for something better. But not everyone was ready to give up. The Quarians and Talvin, the species with the most to lose, formed what they called the Coalition for Galactic Order. They convinced 6 other council species to join them, all species that had benefited from the old system. Together, they commanded 300 warships and the economic resources of 8 interstellar civilizations. Their ultimatum to Earth was simple: submit to Council authority, pay reparations for the destruction of Talvine ships, and accept permanent restrictions on human military and economic expansion, or face total war. President Carter read the ultimatum in her office, surrounded by her Security Council. They're serious about this. 300 warships is not a threat we can ignore. We have 40 combat vessels, Admiral Powell said, plus about 100 armed merchant ships if we count the converted cargo haulers. The numbers don't favor us. Numbers didn't favor us at New Harmony either, Defense Secretary Williams pointed out. We won that fight. We won because the Talvine were overconfident and unprepared, Grace countered. They won't make the same mistakes twice, and 300 ships is a different scale entirely. Even with our technological advantages, we can't handle those odds in a straight fight. Carter leaned back in her chair. So what do? We can't surrender. If we accept their terms, we're right back where we started. Worse, actually. We'd be proving that the Council can force compliance through military threats. We don't fight them head-on, said General Patricia Rodriguez, head of Earth Strategic Operations. We've been analyzing Council fleet operations for years. They have a critical weakness. They depend on a centralized supply network. Fuel depots, ammunition stockpiles, repair facilities. All of it flows through a handful of major logistics hubs. Grace caught on immediately. We hit their supply lines. Exactly. We can't match them ship to ship, but we're faster. We can strike their logistics infrastructure and be gone before they respond. Force them to defend their supply lines instead of attacking our colonies. Make the war too expensive to continue. Carter nodded slowly. It's risky. If we start attacking their infrastructure, they'll call us pirates and terrorists. We'll lose the political high ground. Maybe, Patricia said. Or maybe other species will see that we're fighting smart instead of wasting lives in head-on battles. We've been very public about our principles. Free trade, mutual respect, defensive action only. If we explain what we're doing and why, some species might support us. The meeting continued for hours, planning operations that might determine the future of human civilization. By the time they finished, Earth had a strategy. It wouldn't be easy. People would die, but it was better than the alternatives. 3 days later, human strike teams hit 6 coalition supply depots simultaneously. They used stealth ships that the Council didn't know existed, vessels designed for exactly this kind of operation. The raids were surgical. Get in, destroy the supplies, get out. 0 civilian casualties. 0 unnecessary destruction. Just enough damage to force the coalition to protect their logistics network instead of attacking human space. The coalition responded exactly as predicted. They had to pull back ships from their offensive fleet to guard supply lines. Their advance toward Earth's solar system slowed, then stopped. Coalition members started arguing about who should pay to replace destroyed supplies and repair damaged facilities. Then the diplomatic offensive began. David Ross, no longer an ambassador to a council that was falling apart, became Earth's voice to the galaxy. He appeared in broadcasts across dozens of systems, explaining humanity's position in simple terms. We don't want war. We never wanted war. We left the council peacefully, asking only to be left alone to trade and prosper on our own terms. The coalition responded with threats and military force. They attacked our colony. They killed our people. And when we defended ourselves, they demanded we surrender our sovereignty. We cannot accept that. We will not accept that. But we also will not waste lives in pointless battles. We will strike at military targets. We will defend our people. And we will keep offering the coalition a chance to end this peacefully, with mutual respect and fair terms for everyone. The message resonated. Species that had stayed neutral started openly supporting Earth, not with military force, but with political backing and economic cooperation. The coalition found itself increasingly isolated, fighting a war that was costing them resources while gaining them nothing. Two coalition members withdrew after the first month, stating that they saw no path to victory and no reason to continue fighting. A third withdrew a week later. The coalition fleet, once 300 ships, was down to 200 and losing more every day as member species lost their enthusiasm for a war that wasn't going as planned. High Chancellor Orvik watched all of this from the ruins of his council chambers. Attendance at council sessions was down to 20 species. Most of them were there out of habit more than genuine belief in council authority. The great galactic government that had ruled for 6,000 years was dying, and everyone knew it. He received a message from the Quarian economic minister. Her species' economy had collapsed completely. Their financial networks, built on controlling transactions, had no value when nobody wanted to use them. She was resigning her position and had advice for Orvik. End the war. Accept that the council's time was over. Try to salvage something before there was nothing left to save. Orvik sat alone in his chambers and admitted something he had been avoiding for months. The humans had been right. The council had become corrupt. It had stopped serving its member species and started serving only itself. And when someone finally challenged that corruption, the whole rotten structure collapsed. The question now was what came next. The coalition was falling apart. The council was irrelevant. But the galaxy still needed some way for different species to work together, to trade, to resolve disputes peacefully. The humans seemed to have ideas about that. Maybe it was time to listen. He drafted a message to President Carter, not demanding, not threatening, just asking, could they talk? Could they discuss what might replace the council? Could humanity help build something better? He sent the message knowing it would probably be the last thing he did as High Chancellor. The council was finished. But maybe, just maybe, something better could rise from its ashes. The humans had shown it was possible. Now everyone else had to decide if they were brave enough to try. Admiral Raymond Park stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense network, watching the coalition fleet approach. 212 warships, the last remnants of what had been a force of 300. They had been traveling toward Earth's solar system for 4 days, their course direct and unwavering. This was their final move. If they could strike at Earth itself, maybe they could salvage something from this disaster of a war. If they failed, the coalition was finished. Distance to Mars orbit, Raymond asked. They'll cross the line in 6 hours at current speed, his tactical officer responded. Sir, we have 34 ships in position. Even with all our advantages, those aren't good odds. Raymond nodded. He had been doing the math for days. Earth's defensive fleet could hurt the coalition badly, maybe even win in a straight fight. But the cost would be terrible. Ships would be destroyed. People would die. And for what? To prove a point that had already been proven a dozen times. Open a channel to the coalition flagship. Let me talk to whoever's in command. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Admiral Krennic. The Talvine looked older than he had at New Harmony. The defeat there had aged him. Admiral Park, I wondered if you would be the one to face us. Admiral Krennic, you're about to cross into Earth's defensive sphere. I'm obligated to warn you that our home system is heavily fortified. If you continue, you'll be walking into defenses that make New Harmony look like a training exercise. I know our intelligence has been improving. We know about your orbital platforms. We know about the weapons satellites. We know about the defensive installations on Luna and Mars. Krennic paused. We also know that you're still outnumbered. This is our last chance to salvage something from this war. We have to try. Why? Raymond asked simply. Your coalition is falling apart. 3 of your member species have already withdrawn. The rest are questioning why they're fighting. The council is finished. Everyone knows it. What do you gain by attacking Earth? Pride, Krennic said quietly. The Talvine have never lost a war. We've never retreated from an enemy. Our entire culture is built on military strength and honor. If we pull back now without even trying to strike at your home world, our people will see it as the ultimate humiliation." Raymond felt a strange sympathy for the alien admiral. He understood honor and duty. He understood being trapped by circumstances and culture. "Admiral, I respect that. But think about what you're asking your people to die for. Not for territory, not for resources, not even for victory, just to avoid embarrassment." "It's more than embarrassment. It's our identity as a species." "Then maybe it's time to build a new identity, one based on more than just military conquest." Raymond pulled up a display showing the solar system defenses. "I'm going to show you something that our intelligence probably didn't tell you. This is what you're flying into." He transmitted the tactical data to the Coalition flagship. Krennic's face went pale as he saw the full extent of Earth's defensive network. Thousands of automated defense platforms, kinetic railguns mounted on every major asteroid, missile batteries that could saturate space with ordnance, hidden weapons installations that made the obvious defenses look minimal. "You built all this?" Krennic asked. "Over 200 years. Earth learned a long time ago that if we wanted to survive in a hostile galaxy, we needed to make our home system unconquerable. What you're looking at is the culmination of centuries of preparation. You could throw 1,000 ships at us and you wouldn't take Earth. You'd just kill your people for nothing." Krennic sat in silence looking at the display. Finally, he spoke. "What would you do, Admiral Park, if you were in my position?" "I'd open negotiations, not as a defeated enemy but as a military commander who made a smart tactical decision. You can't win this battle, but you can help build whatever comes next. The Coalition is finished. The Council is finished, but the Talvine don't have to be finished. You can be part of creating something new." Hours later, President Michelle Carter sat across a table from representatives of 8 species. High Chancellor Orvik was there, no longer representing a council that had formally dissolved that morning. Admiral Krennic was there, representing the Talvine Military Command. The Quarian Economic Minister was there, representing a species that had lost its financial empire. Others represented species both large and small, all of them trying to figure out what came next. "We can't recreate the Council," Carter said firmly. "The Council failed because it concentrated power in too few hands and became corrupt. Whatever we build has to be different." "What do you propose?" Orvik asked. He looked tired, like someone who had watched his life's work crumble around him. "A federation, not a government but a framework for cooperation. Free trade between all member species. No tariffs, no fees, no bureaucracy skimming profits from every transaction. Mutual defense agreements for those who want them. A system for arbitrating disputes peacefully, but no central authority that can impose its will on members." The Quarian minister shook her head. "That's chaos. Without central authority, there's no order, no stability." "There's no imposed order," Carter corrected. "But there can be voluntary cooperation. The Council tried to force species to work together. We're proposing that species choose to work together because it benefits everyone." A Drellin diplomat spoke up. He was young for his species, probably chosen because the old guard was too associated with the failed council. "How do we prevent the same corruption from happening again? How do we stop powerful species from dominating weaker ones?" "By making sure no one species or group of species can control the system," Admiral Powell said. She had been quiet until now, listening. "Every member has equal voice. Every trade agreement is bilateral or multilateral, never imposed from above. Every species maintains its own military for defense. We cooperate when it makes sense, but no one can force cooperation." "That sounds like what the humans built after you left the Council," Krennic observed. "Because it worked," Carter said simply. "We're not claiming to have invented something new. We're just showing that there's a better way than the path the Council took." The negotiations continued for days. There were arguments and disagreements. Some species wanted more structure, others wanted less. But slowly, a framework emerged. They called it the Free Trade Alliance. Membership was voluntary. Benefits included access to secure trade routes, arbitration services for disputes, and a mutual defense network for those who wanted it. But no species had to join. No one would be punished for staying independent. 37 species signed the founding charter. More would join in the months and years that followed. The alliance wasn't perfect. There would be disputes and problems, but it was built on principles that actually served its members instead of exploiting them. David Ross stood in the new Alliance Hall, watching representatives from dozens of species working together. It was smaller than the old council chambers, deliberately so. This wasn't meant to be an overwhelming monument to power. It was meant to be a place where equals could meet and solve problems together. A young Drellan diplomat approached him nervously. "Ambassador Ross, I wanted to ask you something. What made you think humanity could stand against the entire council? What made you believe you could win?" David smiled. "We didn't know if we could win. We just knew we couldn't accept living under a system that treated us as inferiors. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right even when you're not sure how it will turn out. But you prepared for years. You built your fleet in secret. You established trade networks. You planned everything. We prepared for the possibility of leaving, yes, but we also genuinely tried to make the council work. We spent 5 years attempting to reform it from within. We only left when it became clear that the council leadership would never accept real change." David looked around the Alliance Hall. "The important thing is that we didn't leave to destroy the council. We left to be free. The council destroyed itself by refusing to adapt." The young diplomat nodded slowly. "My people spent generations in the council. We followed their rules, paid their fees, accepted their authority. We never questioned it. You humans questioned everything. You made us realize we had a choice." Everyone has a choice. It just takes courage to make it. 2 years later, Earth's solar system bustled with activity. Ships from 30 different species moved through the system, trading, exploring, cooperating. The Talvine had established a cultural exchange program with humanity, trying to build that new identity Admiral Krennic had talked about. The Quarians were rebuilding their economy, this time based on actual productivity instead of controlling transactions. High Chancellor Orvik, no longer a chancellor of anything, had retired to a small estate on a Dravine colony world. He spent his time writing a history of the council, trying to understand where it had gone wrong and what lessons future generations could learn. Sometimes he wondered if he should feel ashamed of his role in the council's corruption, but mostly he felt something unexpected: relief. The burden of maintaining a dying institution was gone. He was free to just be himself. President Carter stood on the observation deck of the Alliance Hall, looking out at the stars. Admiral Powell joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thinking about the future?" Grace asked, handing her 1 cup. "Thinking about how close we came to disaster. If any of 100 small things had gone differently, we could have ended up in a devastating war. But we didn't. We took risks, yes, but we also showed restraint when it mattered. That made all the difference." Carter sipped her coffee. "Do you think it will last, the alliance? If we don't get complacent, if we remember that systems need to serve people, not the other way around, if we stay vigilant against corruption and concentrated power." Grace smiled. "Basically, if we keep questioning everything the way humans always do." That's not exactly a reassuring answer. "No, but it's an honest one." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships move through space. Humanity had quit the negotiations when the Council refused to treat them fairly. In doing so, they had accidentally freed dozens of other species who had been trapped in the same corrupt system, not through conquest or revolution, but simply by showing that there was a better way and having the courage to take it. The galaxy was changing, not into a human empire or a council restoration. into something new, something built on cooperation instead of coercion. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect, but it was better, and sometimes better was enough.